I raised my daughter alone after my wife died. The night she humiliated me in public, I realized love doesn't guarantee respect. I used to think love was the strongest thing a person could carry. Then my wife died, and I learned grief is weight too. She was gone before 30. Sudden, ordinary, unfair. Hospital lights, quiet machines, a doctor who wouldn't meet my eyes. Our daughter was 2 years old, too young to understand death, old enough to understand absence. Mommy wasn't coming home. That was all that mattered. People told me I was strong. That's what they say when they don't know how to sit with pain. They went back to their full houses. I went back to mine, half empty, silent, unfinished. I raised my daughter alone. Not the polished version people like to admire. The real one. Every morning. Every night. No backup. No handoff when I was exhausted. I learned diapers, fevers, bedtime routines, and how to keep my voice steady when my chest felt like it might cave in. I worked more. Slept less. Showed up anyway. I sat alone in tiny school chairs at parent-teacher meetings. I taped her drawings to the fridge. I learned how to cook passable meals and how to hide how tired I was. The house echoed, but when she laughed, it didn't matter. She grew into a bright kid. Sharp, curious, quick with words. The kind of child adults compliment because they sense potential. I told myself I was doing something right. Time did what it always does. She got taller, smarter, more distant. The teenage years arrived with slammed doors and moods that shifted without warning. Still, we had our rhythm. Dinner together most nights. Conversations that drifted between school drama and silence. She still called me dad like it was solid ground. I knew friends would start to matter more than family. I wasn't blind, but I believed the years of showing up meant something. That what we'd built would hold. Then came the charity dinner. Work-sponsored event. Community stuff. Scholarships. A room full of people pretending not to judge each other while doing exactly that. I didn't love those things, but I went. My daughter surprised me by asking to come. A bunch of people from school will be there, she said, not looking at me. I want to go. I took it as a win. Bought a tie. Tried to look like someone worth being seen with. On the drive over, she checked her reflection in the visor, adjusting her hair like she was stepping into a different life. You look nice, I said. Just don't be weird, she replied. Don't talk to my friends. Just be normal. I nodded. Normal. I could try. The venue was brick and string lights and 4 smiles. I fell out of place immediately. She didn't. Her eyes scanned the room the moment we walked in, her posture changing like she'd crossed an invisible line. Then she saw them. A group of kids her age, dressed up, loud, performing confidence. Her whole body leaned toward them. I'm going to say hi, she said. I watched her walk away, shoulders back, smile ready. She didn't look back with warmth. It was more like a check, as if confirming I understood my role. I found a table and stood there alone, holding programs and tickets, feeling like I'd delivered something fragile into a room that wouldn't be gentle with it. Across the room, she laughed too hard. Her friends closed in around her, a tight circle. And she looked at me, not casually, but deliberately, like she was measuring distance. I'd raised her alone, carried us through grief and bills and long nights, fought for every ordinary day we had. But standing there, watching her choose who she needed to be, I felt it clearly for the first time. Tonight, she wasn't bringing me along. Tonight, I was something she had to manage. And I didn't yet know how far she was willing to go to impress the people watching. I stayed at that table longer than I should have. I told myself I was giving her space, letting her be young. The truth was simpler. I didn't know where I belonged anymore. From across the room, I watched her with her friends. She laughed on cue, tilted her head just right, moved like every gesture had been rehearsed. Not fake, calculated. This wasn't the kid who used to cling to my coat in grocery stores. This was someone performing. I recognized it. I'd worn that look once myself, back when I thought approval was something you could earn and keep. It never is. Then it happened. She pointed at me. At first it barely registered, but the group turned together, their attention snapping into place. My chest tightened. She said something. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw the timing. The punchline. They laughed. Not cruel yet. Just enough to say we're in on this now. I raised my glass awkwardly, pretending I was part of it. I wasn't. She waved me over. Not warmly. More like you'd wave someone who's interrupting. I almost didn't go. Every instinct warned me. But another one, the older one, pushed me forward. You don't abandon your kid on a stage, even when she put herself there. Up close, it was worse. They looked at me like an artifact. Something outdated. This is my dad, she said. Flat. Like a label. A girl smiled too wide. Oh my God. You're so funny, she said to my daughter. Funny wasn't the word I expected. What's funny? I asked calmly. She brushed it off. We were just talking about parents. Old school parents, a boy added. I nodded. Guess so. My daughter jumped in. He's super strict. He still checks my phone. Exaggerated gasps. Laughter. That's intense, someone said. She didn't look at me. She watched them, feeding off it. That's not really, I started. Dad. She cut in, laughing. It's just a joke. Then more. Parties I supposedly never let her attend. How paranoid I was. Each line earned another reaction. Sad. Someone muttered. I kept my face still. Years of practice. She's exaggerating, I said. I just try to keep her safe. The silence was brief, but sharp. See, she said loudly. This is what I mean. That was the moment it changed. She wasn't embarrassed. She was using me, turning my concern into a costume, so she could fit in better with people who didn't know the cost of it. Someone snapped a photo. Hey, I said. It's fine, she cut in fast. It's just for my story. Her story. Something inside me loosened. Not a break, just a release. They didn't see me. They saw a character she'd offered up. I'm going to get some air, I said. She didn't stop me. As I walked away, I heard her say sorry. He could be a lot. That line followed me out into the night. Standing alone, staring at the city lights, I understood something I hadn't wanted to admit. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a choice. And the audience she chose mattered more than the man who had never once chosen anything over her. I stayed outside longer than I needed to. The cold helped. It slowed everything down. Each time the door opened behind me, laughter spilled out. Too light, too easy. I waited until it stopped affecting me before I went back in. I told myself she was just being a teenager. That kids experiment with who they are. But deep down, I knew this wasn't experimenting. It was deliberate. She hadn't crossed a line by accident. She'd chosen to step over it because it was useful. When I re-entered the room, I felt off balance. Conversations slid past me. Polite smiles. Nods. I could still feel the moment clinging to me like smoke. I saw her across the room, still surrounded, still shining. She didn't look my way. I sat at our table alone. Dinner came. I wasn't hungry. Someone tried small talk. I answered just enough to be decent. Her phone came out again. I didn't need to see the screen to know what she was doing. The moment was being shared now, turned into something neat and consumable. I wondered what the caption said. I wondered how I looked from her side of it. She passed behind my chair once. Didn't stop. Didn't touch my shoulder. Didn't say anything. That hurt more than the jokes. When it ended, I waited by the exit. She came out last with her friends. The performance had worn off her now. When she saw me, she slowed, like she might say something honest. She didn't. Ready? She asked. Yeah. The drive home was quiet in the worst way. Streetlights passed in rhythm. She stared out the window, phone dark now that no one was watching. I wanted to say a lot. I said nothing. At a red light, I looked at her. Without the crowd, she looked younger. Softer. For a second, I saw the little girl who used to fall asleep against my shoulder, trusting me completely. Did you have fun? I asked. Yeah, it was fine. We pulled into the driveway. The house looked the same as always, like nothing had shifted. Inside, she kicked off her shoes and headed down the hall. Good night, she said. Good night. Her door closed, not slammed. Just closed. I stood there, listening to the house settle. Familiar sounds. Safe sounds. I sat at the kitchen table and replayed the night. not with anger, but with clarity. It would have been easier if she'd been openly cruel. Loud pain can be faced. This was quieter. This was her knowing I'd still be there afterward, and using that. That thought stayed with me. I didn't sleep much. Morning came like it always does. Coffee, footsteps, ordinary life. She came into the kitchen looking like herself again. No audience, no performance. "Morning," she said. "Morning." She smiled at her phone. I didn't ask why. The silence between us felt heavier now, filled with what neither of us said. That's when I understood something. Last night hadn't ended at the fundraiser. It had only gone quiet. And silence, if you let it linger, can weigh more than laughter ever did. The days after settled into something stiff and careful. Not angry, not loud, just measured. We moved around each other like furniture you don't want to stub your toe on. Polite, efficient, distant. I kept thinking about lessons. Not the kind you give with speeches. The kind you give by example. The ones you don't even realize you're teaching until years later, when they come back wearing a different face. I taught her to be careful, to look both ways, to think before she trusted people who smiled too easily. I taught her that freedom without responsibility turns into trouble fast. I taught her that respect isn't automatic. It's built, maintained, protected. At least I thought I did. But kids don't just learn what you say. They learn what works. And somewhere along the line, she learned that embarrassment is currency. That attention is louder than integrity. That if you sacrifice the right person, someone safe, someone steady, you get applause. I wondered when that lesson started sticking. Maybe it was the first time she got laughs at school for mocking a teacher. Maybe it was a comment thread online where cruelty got more engagement than kindness. Maybe it was me, biting my tongue too often, choosing peace over confrontation because I thought patience was strength. I replayed 1,000 small moments. Times I let things slide. Times I told myself, she'll grow out of it. Times I confused understanding with permission. One night, I found myself standing in the garage, staring at the old bike I'd taught her to ride. I remembered running behind her, one hand on the seat, one hand ready to catch her. The moment she realized I'd let go. The panic. The joy. She'd never looked back then. She didn't need to. She trusted I was there if she fell. That trust cuts both ways. At dinner that night, she talked about school like everything was normal. Teachers, assignments, a friend who'd gotten in trouble. I listened, nodded, asked questions, play my part. But underneath it all, I was measuring something. Not her words, her awareness. She avoided the subject carefully. Too carefully. She knew. She just didn't want to open it. After we finished eating, I cleared the plates. She lingered at the table, scrolling. "You know," I said, not looking at her, "when your mom died, I promised myself something." She looked up. "I promised I'd do my best not to fail you in ways that mattered." She waited. "Quiet now. I know I make mistakes," I continued. "I know I can be strict. I know I don't always explain myself well." She shifted in her chair. "But everything I do," I said, "comes from trying to protect you. Not control you. Not embarrass you." That word hung there. She exhaled. I didn't mean anything by it. There it was. The half apology that isn't one. "I know," I said. And I didn't know. That was the problem. I finally looked at her. But intent doesn't erase impact. She frowned, like she didn't like the math of that sentence. "I was just joking," she said. "Everyone jokes about their parents." "Not everyone," I said. "And not like that." Silence. "I wasn't asking you to defend me," I went on. "I wasn't even asking you to agree with me. I was asking you not to use me." Her eyes dropped to the table. "I didn't think it was that big of a deal," she said quietly. I believed her. That hurt more than if she hadn't. "Here's the thing," I said. "One day, you're going to be in a room where the joke costs more than you expect. And the people laughing won't be there when the bill comes due." She didn't respond. Teenagers hate forecasts. They live in now. I stood up and picked up the last plate. "I don't need to be cool," I said. "I don't need to be liked. But I do need to be respected, especially by you." She nodded. "Once. Small. Okay." she said. Okay isn't resolution. It's a placeholder. That night, lying in bed, I realized something uncomfortable. Raising a child alone doesn't just make you stronger. It makes you slower to confront because you're afraid of breaking the only bridge you have. But bridges weaken if you never maintain them. And love, I was learning, isn't just about showing up. Sometimes it's about standing your ground, even when the person across from you is someone you'd once carry on your shoulders without hesitation. The next few weeks taught me how quiet consequences can be. Nothing exploded. No shouting matches. No slammed doors. Just small shifts. Missed eye contact. Conversations that ended a little too early. A distance that felt intentional now. She followed the rules. Technically. Curfews met. Grades fine. Chores done when asked. On paper, things were good. In reality, something had changed shape. I noticed it when she started correcting me in front of people. Not openly disrespectful, just enough to score points. A comment here, a tone there, a sigh when I explained something she already knew. Each time, it was small enough to ignore, and that's what I did. Again, I told myself I was choosing my battles, that not every hill was worth dying on, that she'd find her way back without me forcing it. But the truth was uglier. I was tired. Tired of being the only parent. Tired of being the bad guy by default. Tired of standing firm while the world rewarded the opposite. Somewhere along the way, I'd started confusing endurance with wisdom. The moment that snapped it into focus wasn't dramatic. It was a Saturday afternoon. Grocery store. Bright lights. Long lines. Ordinary life. She was with me, scrolling her phone, half present. I asked her to grab something from the next aisle. She didn't move. I said in a minute, she muttered, eyes still on the screen. I waited, then repeated myself. She looked up annoyed. God, relax. I heard you. A couple nearby glanced over. Nothing big, but I saw it. The same calculation as the fundraiser. The same casual dismissal, sharpened by an audience. Something in me settled. Not anger. Clarity. Put the phone away, I said. Her head snapped up. Why? Because I asked you to do something, I said evenly. And because that tone isn't acceptable. She laughed. A short one. You're being dramatic. I looked at her and realized this was the line. Not because of groceries. Because of momentum. Phone. Away. I said again. She held my gaze for a second, deciding whether to push. Then she did, slowly, deliberately. She turned her body away and went back to scrolling. That was the moment I should have stopped everything earlier. I took the cart handle and turned it toward the exit. We're leaving, I said. What? She followed, confused now. Why? Because I let things slide for too long, I said. And it ends here. People stared. I didn't care. Outside, she crossed her arms. This is so embarrassing. I nodded. I know. She waited for me to soften. I didn't. I'm not your enemy, I said. But I'm also not your prop. You don't get to disrespect me because you think I'll absorb it. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Here's what's going to change, I continued. If you speak to me like that, at home or in public, you lose privileges. Immediately. No debate. No performance. She scoffed. You're overreacting. Maybe, I said, but I'd rather overreact now than regret later. We drove home in silence. That night, she didn't come out for dinner. I left the plate in the fridge. Not as a peace offering, as consistency. I sat alone and thought about my wife, about the promises I made when she died, about how protecting a child eventually turns into preparing them to face consequences. Love without boundaries isn't kindness. It's avoidance. I realized then that raising her alone hadn't just made me protective. It had made me hesitant to draw hard lines, afraid that firmness would feel like abandonment. But children don't need endless patience. They need limits that mean something. And as much as it hurt to admit, the line I finally drew that day should have been there long before a room full of strangers laughed at my expense. It happened on a weeknight. Nothing special about the day. Homework done. Dinner quiet. the house settling into that familiar evening hum. I thought maybe we'd turn a corner, not fix things, but stabilize them. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, quick and guarded, and I knew before she said anything. "There's a party," she said. "Friday. Everyone's going." I didn't answer right away. I learned that silence sometimes tells you more than words. "Where?" I asked. She named a house I didn't recognize, then added, too quickly, "Parents won't be home, but it's not a big deal." There it was. The same math. The same downplaying. "No," I said. Immediate reaction. Shoulders tight. Jaw set. "You didn't even think about it." "I did," I said. "That's why the answer's no." She stood up. "You're doing it again." "Doing what?" "Treating me like a child. Like I can't handle anything." I stayed seated. "Calm. You're a child. And some things aren't about handling. They're about risk." She shook her head, pacing now. "You don't trust me." That one landed. "I trust you," I said. "I don't trust rooms full of kids with no adults and too many phones." She laughed, sharp, familiar. "You just don't want to look bad if something happens." I stood up then. "No," I said. "I don't want you to be the thing that happens." She grabbed her jacket and headed for the door. "Where are you going?" I asked. "Out," she said. "I need air." I followed her to the car. Not chasing. Just not letting the moment end unfinished. She got in the passenger seat and slammed the door. I got on the driver's side and closed mine. The engine stayed off. The car became its own small room. Nowhere to retreat, nowhere to perform. For a while, we just sat there. "I don't hate you," she said finally. "I just hate how you make me feel." I nodded. "Like what?" "Like I'm trapped. Like everyone else gets a life, and I get rules." I looked straight ahead. "You get rules because you get someone who stays." She turned toward me. "You don't understand what it's like. Everyone's watching. If you don't keep up, you disappear." There it was. Not attitude. Fear. "I know what it's like to disappear," I said quietly. "I watched your mother vanish from a hospital bed. Overnight. No warning. No audience." She went still. "I didn't tell you no because I want control," I continued. "I told you no because some mistakes don't announce themselves until it's too late." Her voice dropped. "You think I'm stupid?" "No," I said. "I think you're young. And I think you're learning the wrong lessons from the wrong people." She stared at the dashboard. "You embarrass me." I exhaled slowly. "You humiliated me." That was the first time I'd said it out loud. She flinched, not dramatically, just enough to tell me it mattered. "I didn't think," she started. "I know," I said. "That's what scares me." Silence again. Thicker, but different now. Not avoidance. Processing. "I don't want to lose you," she said. Almost a whisper. I turned to her then. "You won't. But you don't get to keep me by stepping on me." She wiped at her eyes, annoyed with herself for it. "I don't know how to balance it. Them and you. That's the work," I said. "And it's harder than getting laughs." We sat there until the engine ticked from cooling metal, until the night wrapped around the car. When we finally went back inside, nothing was fixed, but something was honest. And sometimes honesty is the first real boundary two people draw together. Things didn't magically improve after that night in the car. That's the lie people like to tell. That one honest conversation fixes years of drift. Real change is quieter, slower. It limps before it walks. But something had shifted. She watched her tone more. Not perfectly, not consistently, but intentionally. And I watched myself too. When to correct, when to listen, when silence was strength, and when it was just avoidance in a nicer coat. We were relearning each other. A few weeks later, she asked if I could drive her to school early. No explanation. Just asked. I said yes. The car ride was short. Morning traffic. Radio low. The kind of quiet that used to feel dangerous but now felt earned. Before she got out, she paused with her hand on the door. "Hey," she said. I waited. "I told my friends you were strict," she said, eyes forward. "But I also told them why." I didn't respond right away. I didn't want to scare the moment off. "And?" I asked. She shrugged. "Some of them didn't get it, but one of them did." "That's enough," I said. She nodded. Then, softer, "I'm sorry about the fundraiser." Not perfect, not dramatic, but real. I know, I said. She opened the door, then stopped again. You're not embarrassing, she added. I just didn't know how to be both your daughter and me. She stepped out before I could answer. I sat there a second longer than necessary, watching her walk toward the building. She didn't look back, but this time it didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like growth. Raising her alone taught me a lot of things. How to endure, how to sacrifice, how to keep going when no one's watching. But this taught me something harder. Respect isn't inherited. It's negotiated over time, through discomfort, through boundaries that hold even when they hurt, especially when they hurt. Love without dignity turns into permission, and permission, given too freely, teaches people how to wound you without consequence. I still love my daughter. That never changed, but I don't disappear for her anymore. I don't shrink myself to make her shine brighter in someone else's eyes. I stand where I belong, and she's learning, slowly, that the man who raised her alone wasn't an obstacle to her life. He was the foundation. One day, she'll understand the cost of respect. Not what it takes to demand it, but what it takes to give it to the people who never stopped giving it to you. When that day comes, I'll be here. Not as a prop, not as a punchline, just as her father, standing my ground.